to the Cannabis Coffee Hour. I'm your host, Rob Cantrell. Here with me, I got an exciting episode, a heavy episode, a cool episode. I'm excited. I got a dope dude I'm going to talk to. I also got some cannabis. I got some coffee. We're going to just rap for 45 minutes. This dude is a good friend of mine. We've done comedy for over 10 years in New York. We've made music. We've made videos. He has a great project coming out with Broadway video on Audible coming up called Bloodweed. And it sounds hilarious. Please give it up for my good friend Boris Khaykin, everybody.
Yeah, the crowd goes wild. Nice. Thank you. Thank you. The many whispers that sound like Rob Cantrell.
Oh, dude, but that's the internet. That's the internet out there, man. You know,
You're
we're
representing.
all super connected. You know, it's all
That's
super
right.
connected to the internet alien brain that we're zooming out there, brother. So there is somebody with their cannabis and their coffee. And I've been making some beats, man. I've been doing some lo-fi hip hop on you. So I've been putting some beats underneath that cheesy intro. So it'll sound fun.
Oh, hell yeah.
Hopefully. Dude, I'm so happy you're here. I'm smiling. Thank you. Just to let everybody know, Boris is very interesting in what's going on. Just what we have to bring up is he's a Ukrainian refugee from Europe, and his parents, and they came over here, and Boris is one of the hardest working men in show business. I know him and James Brown, and the ghost of James Brown, man. Boris does film. He's a hilarious stand-up. He's opened for me a few times. He's headlining shows now out there. He also is a great editor, film director. He played the guitar. Just always been fascinating. Boris, how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. It's funny. I feel like it's like almost a loaded question. The amount of texts that I've gotten from people that are like, I don't know if this is weird to ask, but are you and your people good? Which, like, you know, as far as close family for me, everybody who got out years ago. We have like one friend, my dad's friend and his kid, his adult son, that's in where we're from, which is Odessa, which for now, there's a lot of like conflicting things on Twitter all the time. But according to them, so far, that city is okay. There's no like Russian military presence there yet.
God bless, man.
Yeah. But otherwise, I'm chilling and I'm happy and thankful to be in America.
God bless America. Not to get too into countries and labels, and you know, a lot of this podcast I talk about meditation, and it's definitely herb infused. So I've been writing this new joke is like, I don't know if I'm super spiritual or I just smoke too much weed.
They are one and the same.
They are one and the same, you know. So I do go down the peace love avenue here on the podcast. So it's super interesting. Yeah, I bet you're getting calls and interviews, and it's kind of a bad situation that you're gonna get this attention, but at the same time, it's nice because it's so complex to have somebody to kind of talk to about it, Boris. So I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you being on this.
For sure.
I feel sorry for the country of Ukraine and everybody involved, because it's just like with this internet shit, we're all so super connected right now, you know? So it's like, we're too smart to do war. You know, war is just, I tweeted, wars for nerds. Like, it's just like...
Yeah, like Putin's a dork.
He is a dork. He's a super dork. I mean, they're all dorks, man. You know, a lot of like politicians and a lot of people in show business. It's the same thing. It's just like dorks going for superpower, man.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is that, like, you know, I was 7 when I left there. So I'm like, you know, I've been in America for a long time. And when I look at it, I probably look at it closer to the way most people look at it here, where like my concern in this case is more just like, you know, where we are as a globe, as a world. And like, there is kind of like an old world, new world thing happening here where like, I think to a lot of people were like, I thought we don't do this anymore. I thought we don't play like this anymore.
Yeah.
And It's weird because I don't. I have my own personal experience and I have my opinion from based on people I talk to over there and things that I've seen. But like at the same time, I also am like unsure of like what is the deal? Are we done with this, or are we kind of like kidding ourselves in the fact that like we've gotten all into this new world diplomacy, peace, love thing, and it's like, oh yeah, but if you have an insane bully that's the head of a superpower, like are we capable of handling that? You know what I mean? Or are we too up in
Yeah.
the peace and love thing where we forgot when shit goes down that like, it's not all peace and love.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a part of the truth of, definitely that we have to sit and meditate and think about when you handle something, a situation, and it's just like, yeah, it's so different in terms of even me being old, and I don't, am kind of like, oh, the trans thing or this thing, and I don't get technology. I get being disconnected. So I also get other universes and other people just working on a whole other, platform, which, at the end of the day, it's just godless. I don't know if you could call it godless, but maybe that's just ego driven, just to the point where it's like, but you just know that those super bullies are out there, and that as good as people are, there's dark people. And
Yeah, I think godless is a good way to word it because I'm not
yeah,
a religious person and I don't necessarily believe in that, but I think that there is an element to when you're maniacal like that is like you probably equate yourself with God, and that's kind of like the ultimate godlessness is when you think you're the end all be all in like a way that's outside of any connection with anybody else.
yeah, it's when
Very
you
poignant, Rob.
yeah, back at you, man, back at you. It's such a sensitive subject because it's happening in real time right now. So I want to kind of approach it with some type of respect for all parties. I don't know if if somebody was threatening my family, I know my gut reaction. And then I also know about higher mindedness, and I also know killing is just fucking whack, like that's the trip I'm on right now. It's just like to kill another human being. I'm loving life so much at this point in my life that I've made it to 49 and have a family, and I went skiing, weed is getting legal, I do comedy, I hang out with super interesting dudes, it's like you, man. And it's just like, yeah, it's
Yeah, why fuck this up,
why fuck this up? That's what I'm saying. Like, we're riding a really good, if you know where we've been and where we come from and how much violence and how much ignorance and how much shit we've risen above in a very short time. And the capabilities of the mind is just, dude, electric cars like people are doing, and people are, flying to space, it's just, but I don't even think we've even tapped into the brain. Like, we haven't even tapped into the inner space of what's going on. I think what meditation is telling me is this is the bullshit. It's really the real shit is inside, and we haven't even scratched the surface.
Inner space, meditation and acid, but yeah.
Yeah, acid, meditation, just like Tibetan monks, pacifism. What if you do gardening, like if you really let something go and then hook up the soil and do everything, like just to see nature. I think I'm all about nature, just to see nature take place. Like, we haven't even let nature do its thing because we're always trying to control everything.
Yeah. And don't even get me started on the gut biome. We're just beginning to learn about that shit.
Oh yeah,
I
dude.
have a friend.
How's
that's
your
like,
gut these days? How's your acid level in your gut? Like, it's
I
all your
think good.
gut.
I think I know. I have a buddy who's a like bioinformatics scientist who like actually worked with the company that did a bunch of the early COVID testing stuff. But yeah, he was saying like what we were just starting to learn about your like genome and your DNA like 30, 40 years ago, we're just starting to do with gut biome. Like it's just in its infancy where like we're just starting to understand that stuff.
It's so and it's so linked to mental health and what you put in there, and then also to your immune system. and how you can fight shit off and stuff. I'm going into a big flaxseed oil thing. I'm watching these old dudes doing stretches, like, and they talk about what to eat and shit. And flaxseed is I'm all about heart health these days. Like, I don't take any pills or do anything, but I just like the heart is a trippy piece of the body. That's kind of like everything. Like I talk about on
man, it's
podcast is like, we don't know where the electricity of the heart comes from.
right. That's actually, I just learned that, my wife is pregnant, and one of the first things I've been like asking all these questions, and you went through all this, and like just seeing like where science is now, like at 10 weeks, they could tell the sex of the baby and test it for stuff. They're testing like cell-free DNA in my wife's blood. But the thing I just found out recently, because I was like, what comes first, the heart or the brain? And she was like, yeah, the heart. She's like, the first thing you detect is the heartbeat. We can tell the electrical signal of the heartbeat before anything else. But that's where that heartbeat law is, like, the shit that they're fighting about in all them other states.
I don't know anything about it. I don't know about the heartbeat law. I don't want to get super political, but what is the heartbeat law? What is that? For abortion. For abortion.
Yeah, like, it's some Texas shit.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Yeah, I'm pretty free and lit. I think it should, that's up to the woman's choice. What they got to do, they got to do.
I think we're both on the same page there. Yeah, I just think everybody tries to argue it
I'm
from
hands
like
off
a
on
science.
That.
I know, yeah. But like you see everybody trying to argue it from a science perspective, and this is where like spirituality does come in a little bit, is like, you got to sort of go with your gut in a sense, because the science fucking what's like fetal viability changes month to month as science, or year to year as science progresses, or like what's all this shit evolves. And ultimately it's like, what's the kind of world that we want to live in? And I'm with you. The better one is we take a back seat and let the ladies make the right decision for themselves.
Yeah. I think with that, even, they got to figure that one out. And with life beginning and ending, it's like, you're just lucky you make it to like 7, but at the same time, it's like, it's just got to be, I think chaos is a part of it, and understanding like not everything is hunky dory, and, as we evolve and learn, you kind of see the complexities in those things, and I think society is the same way, that we're all figuring out these hard questions. Like, we've all ditched all these hard questions as a people, and now we're getting to face them. And one of them is, the Ukraine situation. What is your parent? But Ukraine seems kind of hip. Is the president a comic? Is that what I read?
The president is, and a good one too. The president's was one of the top comedians. He had a show where he played the president, if I understand correctly, where like a comedy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, and like he seems like, my personal opinion, but he seems like a relatively good dude with like relative integrity for like, a politician. All politicians, I take everything with a grain of salt. I don't care whether you're a former comedian or a former fucking, reality TV star.
It's
America,
a game. It's just like anything, you get into the game. You get into the game.
But as far as that stuff goes, he seems to be a pretty respectable guy. Again, it's like really tough, because there's not a neat narrative or story when it comes to a lot of that kind of stuff. Like, the story that we would want to tell in America is that Ukraine is going more pro-Western democracy, that they want to join NATO, that and that's a correct story in a ton of ways. But the other story is that like it's still a super conflicted region. There's a reason they're not in NATO yet, because NATO, part of their stipulations is that you can't have territorial disagreements. Like, you can't have a country that's ready to be pulled into a war, which Ukraine, in some ways has been for a long time, joining NATO, because that basically guarantees NATO getting into a world war, which we're all obviously trying to avoid. But then on the other side, you have Russia that's got tons of oil money, and you have all these like older Eastern Ukraine, like there are people that are ethnically and culturally very pro Russia there. That's why you have these separatist groups. And so like, you have some of these people that have like social security programs and stuff that they know Ukraine and Europe can't afford another Greece. So they know like Ukraine can't afford it. So there's some like older conservative Russian, like Ukrainians who don't care as much about, the progressive values of the West that Putin is against, like obviously Russia's super homophobic, and like not just Putin, but like culturally, there's a lot of homophobia there. There's racism there. There's all that kind of stuff that like, that the more Russian people are like, who cares? I just want someone to pay for my fucking social security when I'm older, and Ukraine's not going to do it, and Europe's not going to do it. But obviously, again, it's just like it's
Super
very
complex. Yeah, and the regions are all different, and it leans this way and that. Yeah, it sounds when I heard
it's an impossible situation to manage.
Yeah,
because it's just really hard because even like when we were leaving, this was 1991 when we left, there was a coup when I was like a little bit before we left. I almost forgot about it. My dad reminded me, but they hid me. My dad worked at a TV station in New York, and there were military entering Odessa, which is the city where we're from. They hid me in a TV station. I was like 6 years old. And ultimately, it didn't go anywhere because basically the soldiers disobeyed the orders to like attack their brothers and sisters in Ukraine, and that's sort of like what some people are that's what people are hoping for there. But there was military action. Obviously, it's already gone far beyond that in much of Ukraine, but in Odessa, where I'm from, I'm not sure. And it's a culturally like, it's like the center of comedy in Russia, funny enough, is Odessa. Like a lot of the big comedians in Russia come from there. And so it's like, yeah, so I think a lot of people are still hopeful that like human element, and you see it now. Like I
kind
think
of a civil war in a sense, in some way. Yeah, it has that. That's what I was kind of linking it. It's weird. Yeah.
I wouldn't go as far as civil war, because I think that the majority of the people don't want a war, and I think the majority of the people did vote overwhelmingly for Ukrainian sovereignty and independence.
Yeah, I didn't mean it more that way. Just like brother on brother. When you see somebody that you're straight up from. It's like, January 6th or, Trump people. I know a lot of, I went to school in Southern Virginia in middle school and high school. So I know, hardcore conservatives that were like supporting that shit. And I'm just like, Jesus. But if I had to go,
man, I'm from Jersey.
If I had to go to fisticuffs with them, it's like, I couldn't do that. Like, I know those motherfuckers, it's like, I know who they are. Right. That's what bums me out, is like when people fight like that, especially adults, kids, you're scrappy and you're dumb, but adults doing it. And that's an adult. And then adults signing off on a government level. It's like, dude.
It's mindfulness. That's exactly what you're describing. Kids don't have control over their emotions, their hormones. They're not present. Yeah. And like I remember, being a kid is like you do impulsive dumb shit. And then the worst part is afterwards, when you're mad at yourself later because you made decisions that, like, even if someone wronged you, you made the situation worse. You spited yourself just to hurt the other person. And then it's like, well, now what? I'm no better off. They're no better off. I know adults that do that. And that's like sad to see, is just like people that are their own worst enemy and shit. You know?
They haven't learned that lesson, and it's like life kind of spins these lessons at you over and over. And eventually you're like, okay, I got that. Okay. Yeah. And the mistakes and the losses, you learn all these lessons, but some people don't learn them, or it doesn't pick up, or they're just hurt. A lot of them are just so hurt inside that they don't, they can't move on.
Yeah, it's sad when you meet somebody that's like, a 60-year-old man that just like, if you don't fix that shit, I feel like in your like by your 20s or 30s, or at least get in the direction of like being aware of that stuff.
Yeah.
You're just, because it's harder to change as you get older. You got like neuroplasticity when you're younger. You can adapt, you can change the brain. But as you get older, if you're used to that thing where like you get angry and you just don't check yourself and you allow that anger to like take control of you, or that sucks
cursing,
to see somebody
all of it, smoking, all of it's like self-control is hard once. because we are a part of nature, and it's like the memory of nature. And so if you nurture something to go this way, it's, you know, it's going to go this way. If you have the plant and you put the stick and you line it up, it's going to go the way of the stick, even when it's past the stick, because you just like, it's just learned it that way. It's been pushed that direction, you know. That's what
Sure.
been going with meditation and like mantras. I think it's dope, is like, is reprogramming my brain. You know, that's how I reprogram my brain to be more kind and be more forgiving and be more less judgmental. Like I just go through these things, like I work on that. And then they say, like, by doing that, it's just like how we absorb media or anything, you know, we're just a part of nature. We absorb shit. So it's a lot of these negative people just absorbed a lot of negative shit, and it just, you know, gets in there.
For sure. And especially if it's early on, like one of those things where you just can't think about the future long term because you're so concerned with like trauma happening to you in the moment. That's the thing where you don't realize that, like, look, you're 15 years old now. Think about what a difference if for the next 40 years you work on like being more self-aware of working harder and building skills and getting better at talking to people and better at stuff, versus if for the next 40 years you like drink and dick around and act like an asshole. Like, you're going to be two completely different people, like unrecognizable one from the other. Just 40 years of accumulative progress versus 40 years of like just destroying yourself. You know, people don't realize that. And if you're 15 and you can't even think past the next day, let alone 40 years, that's tough. It's easy to ignore that.
Yeah, it's easy to ignore it. And there is something to be said, you know, because we don't know it all. There is something to be said to be living in the moment, because you never know when your card gets pulled. That's the
Also
flip of
true.
that's the flip of the coin. That's the devil's flip
Yeah.
of the coin, that it's like, you could do all the right things that can happen tomorrow. That's where I lean into spirituality and all that shit. Is just like, yeah, you still don't know.
Yeah. Balance. Well,
But
that's why you gotta have balance.
but you are setting the cards up right, and you are playing the odds, and you are playing the numbers, and you are being an adult playing it the safe and smart way. How I always thought of it is like, I want to make decisions so I'm hooking up, you know, 55-year-old Rob, you know, I want to make this.
Yeah.
I'm trying to hook that guy up so he's not struggling, or he's not questioning his life decisions or anything. Like he feels like he got it all out. You know, he loves himself.
Yeah, take care of your future self for sure. And I would credit, you know, weed with some of that for me in the beginning. You know, I don't have access to an alternate world where I didn't start smoking, and maybe I would have had similar like emotional and psychological progress. But when I started smoking was around when I started becoming more introspective, when I started going over those moments of when I was an asshole and replaying them in my head and thinking what I could have done different, and or moments where I wasn't even an asshole, but still replaying them in my head and thinking, what could I have done different to better that moment? You know, whatever it was.
Yeah, or moments, or moments of joy, and you're just like, wow, that was wild. That was like one of the best moments of my life. You know, like you never thought of it that way. It always makes me think of things in a different way. Like it takes the lens and does this. If I'm going down a dark hole or something, and it always does that. And a lot of times it's been focusing on the positive. I actually went to this place in Massachusetts. It's called the Wellness Theory. Great. I got a strain. It's called Max Stomper, and it's a indica, and it's amazing. It's great. It's 13% THC. I went to a dispensary in Michigan and it was 20%, which was way too high. But this is I had to get it down to the Cadillac, to the old man phase.
Yeah, mix in a little CBD stuff or something.
Yeah, that's what I did. I did do that. I'm all about that. I'm all about mixing the CBD. I'm all about you know, today I just had the end of an old bowl of yesterday, and then I'm done for the rest of the day. You know, that's how I'm gonna roll with today. And they pack them in these pre-packed chillums. So it's like a pre-packed chillum of like a fine grade Perfect.
Oh yeah.
This is all like super legal in Massachusetts. What are you puffing on these days? I know you enjoy the herb now and then, Boris.
Yeah, I've been pretty good. I've been cutting down and then having like bouts of like having to do the particular type of work, like if it's like manual labor or something like that, where I'll smoke the whole time.
Yeah,
But
cleaning, it's great. Yeah.
yeah, I've been kind of back and forth between because I have a ton still of this weed that my brother-in-law grows in Sonoma, and at this
Wow.
point, it's
I
like
had some.
outdoor
It's
weed.
awesome.
Yeah, it's solid. It's maybe I'm like a little tired of it or something, but it's
Give
like
him a
it's
good
outdoor
plug.
weed.
He's your brother-in-law. We're on the Cannabis
Well, no,
Coffee Hour.
listen, well, he's not selling it like that. He's like distributing it wholesale to be processed into oils. Whatever I say is not going to affect his business in any way. But and also this is like a test plant that I like. It wasn't even properly cured. I like cut it myself and stuff. It was like
Wow.
some like gnarly outdoor shit, And
Did
so I
you go
still have
out there?
that.
You went out there to Sonoma and cut it down and trimmed it and everything?
Well, I went out to visit my family, and then he's got it there. He literally has like, man, like just a fucking house filled with garbage bags upon garbage bags that need to be like processed and turned to oil. It's wild out there. But I like mailed myself back. Thank you to the good old U.S. Postal Service working just
Yeah.
dandy.
You don't
And
want to document it too hard, but yeah, we all know.
yeah, I'll stop right there. But yeah, but I get when I'm trying to like do heady work, like if I'm trying to write or I'm trying to do
Write
something,
a script. Yeah, I
I'll
know.
order. Well, for that, I'll order some like nicer delivery sativa that keeps my energy up and also I've just been trying to. I got a kid coming up, and I've been trying to cut down on it a little bit. So I've been
Oh,
like, some weeks I'm like once or twice a week. Other weeks I'll do every day, depending on what I'm working on and what I'm doing. But I've gotten much better at like, it's not assumed that I will smoke today, which is something that was assumed for maybe a couple decades.
yeah, we all, it all bends and weaves. Maybe you give it up for 5 years. I don't give a shit. It's just, it is what it
Right,
is.
right.
But thanks God it's been around and it's around when you can. And what I think is cool about modern times is that the legalization and the stigma isn't like when we were when we were teenagers or young adults, that it's getting more and more normalized, which I enjoy. And I think that's what kind of takes the fiendish stuff away, where you don't have to like, oh God, I got crazy. I just gotta smoke it all right now. Now we can be like, okay, have that. I know it's around, it's always around, it's probably around
Totally.
too
And
much.
I think it's also probably in a way, I mean, I'm sure this has been said before, but like in a way, it's almost better for teenagers that like, I'm not going to say smoke or don't smoke. I obviously did when I was a teenager, but like part of it, I think at the time for a lot of teenagers is like, we're doing this bad thing we're not supposed to be doing. And now that it's less stigmatized, I think that'll maybe be less of the case that the thing to do is to like sneak into the woods or like, oh, we're going to be bad and smoke in your grandpa's basement or whatever. Like, yeah, I mean, when I was 15, 16, I was smoking and I'm not going to advise anybody when they're 15 or 16 to smoke, but I'm also not going to pretend like people aren't doing it. But I think getting rid of the element of doing it to be badass is probably a good thing.
Yeah, totally. It's all old hippies, all their old grandmothers that need it the most, and all the old
Well,
hippies
I'm
that need it
wondering
the
if
most.
like if you're a kid of one of those, then to rebel might be like, fuck that shit, like
Yeah,
grandpa's always high, that weird old stoner. I'm gonna
stoner
be
listening
fucking
Grateful
on
Dead
my shit.
music. It's terrible. I hate it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I totally think it's gonna bob and weave and do what it's due, but I do think getting people out of prisons and just taking the pipeline of dark crime out of the element of it all is
for
healthy for
sure, for sure.
society.
Harder said than done, though. I will say, just especially knowing what my brother-in-law is going through and just seeing what's happening in a lot of California is, like this was sort of unforeseen where everybody was like, legalize it. But what ends up happening is they got all these different government programs and regulations and taxes. And like, of course, I think we should tax it and make some money on it. But at the same time, they're having trouble competing with the black market that still exists, that there's people that have infrastructure and have set it up and they've been pros at it for decades. And now you got people that are either new to the business or maybe just in general dealing with
they made
paying
it too
all
hard.
of the fees.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
They made it
the
way
prices
too
have
hard. I
plummeted.
think that needs to get balanced out. Nobody's taking any initiative of actually like monitoring the data and looking at other countries that has legalized and how they do it. And it was mostly a money grab. It's just like a conditioning of American culture. It's like, okay, we're going to make as much money, and the government's the same way. Okay, we're going to tax this as much as we can, but it does squeeze out the little guy, and it makes it, and it develops the other markets more. So yeah, they need to like simplify it, make it as simple as possible. But as we said before, there is, in terms of regulations, like I do think like you shouldn't smoke until you're 21. I do think that it should
Or
be,
at least that's what we should say.
or certain areas, and I wouldn't encourage driving and all this stuff. We're figuring out all this stuff, what is and what isn't. So yeah, it's just gonna take,
I think we'll work it out. It's still
Yeah.
new, it's still
It's so new.
All this shit's gonna have problems. It's never gonna be perfect, especially when the government's doing it. But yeah, I have faith that with time we'll work. The important thing is that culturally we're adapting. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
It's harder to change culture in some ways than it is to change law.
Yeah.
Like culture changes no matter what you do, but to control it and have it change how you want it to change, that's pretty tough.
I was going to
And
say,
it's good
what
that
is
we're
the
evolving.
definition of culture? What exactly is culture? It is just a vibe of what everybody's doing at a certain,
I think that's a good definition. I think it's the vibe of what everyone's doing. I mean, it's like our overall collective values, and ideals, or how we see the world. And that's another problem today, is that we're both all connected and online, but at the same time everyone's got their bubbles. And I see a lot of that. I see a lot of that from friends in New York too, who like have particular ways of viewing the world, and they'll make like political points that they think are slam dunks, and I'm like, yo, listen, like, I even agree with you, but if you think this is convincing anybody who thinks differently from you, you're kidding yourself. Like, you need to go back to first principles and think about a world where someone grew up on a different side of the country and has been taking in not just different information, but different like input directly around them as to how the world functions. Somebody who doesn't have 500 neighbors in their building, but has 3 neighbors in their fucking square, like 10 square miles around them. Like, these are just going to be different. People make the assumption that people think the same. And that's a thing I think people are learning too.
Yeah, and people are addicted to the drama. People love the drama. They love the conflict, or not that they love the conflict, but it's just like, it's kind of an ego thing when it comes to judgment. And it's hard in comedy because you got to judge stuff to make jokes. But at the same time, I've just noticed, like, once you start spitting, it all, it comes back at you,
Sure.
right? It comes
Especially
right back at you from an angle you didn't see, or you were blind as you were throwing it. And that's why I try to keep, the pandemic is one thing it's taught me, is just try to keep an open mind and open heart. But every day I get angry, I open up. Yesterday, the Ukraine, it's just like you go down a dark hole. I'm just like, gosh, all of it, so I get the anger and sometimes wanting to vent it out. People got to vent.
People got to vent. But yeah, at the same time, like, I always try to err on the side of like, just got to remind yourself to be calm, because you can't help people when you're not calm. It's really difficult to be helpful if you're not in the right state of mind. And like, the main goal's got to be to try to make shit better. And so it's hard to make shit better if you're in a negative it's obviously easier said than done. But like, this Ukraine shit is bad, but like, at the same time, China's probably watching to see what they do with Taiwan in the who knows when. So like, it sucks. It's stressful. It's worrying. But at the same time, like, Taiwan's Ukraine's my homeland. I obviously care. Um, I probably agree with right now the American policy to not like get into a war over it, because that could escalate to a really bad situation. And as much as I'd want to see my country defended, my country's America, but as much as I'd want to see my homeland defended,
Yeah.
I would not want to see my country pulled into a world war in that stance. But if
Bringing in the jets and start bombing everything up in parts
Yeah,
of
but if
Europe,
China goes
it's
into
not going to help
Taiwan,
anything. Yeah, we're
no,
trying to do it. That's why I kind of, it's hard, man. But yeah, the move is, yeah, just to not use anger and ignorance, and also, but try to make, because when you're calm, you can make you can make, when you're calm, you can be more creative in solving problems. And that's what I've
for
learned
sure.
when you get thrown curveballs in life. You have to get creative in how you find happiness or humor, how you get out of situations. I think comedy is that. I always think comedy is a self-defense mechanism. Humor is a self-defense mechanism for when shit goes bad or awkward or weird, or just to, and it's just whatever. But it can also be used as self-defense. You can also fuck somebody up, so you have to be a little bit respectful of it all.
For sure. And agreed on the self-defense. It's kind of funny. Like I've talked about this before, where I think like part of my immigrant experience that did shape getting into comedy was like, and I think this is not just me, but anybody who gets into comedy, there's an element of where like you're afraid to look stupid, or you're afraid to do things that people will laugh at. And so I think sometimes going into comedy or purposefully being funny is a way of regaining control of like, see, I do this on purpose. I control when you laugh at me. And I think for some people, that goes too far in the other direction, where now they want control so bad, and they want not just for you to laugh, but agree with you on opinions you have, or, when people get political and stuff on stage, that they lose the part that like, well, remember why you started this. It's that sometimes you're funny not on purpose, and that's because you don't have full awareness of all the world. And the best kind of funny is when you're balancing between that, and you're reading the room, and you're actually aware of like the differences in perspective that people have. And so you make them laugh on purpose, but you bounce off the parts that aren't on purpose to make it, a seamless experience.
Yeah, it goes both ways. And the thing about that's cool about it, particularly, I think what we're leaning into is stand-up comedy, is that you get humbled really quickly. You still build up ego, and there's still ego meaning, but even your most basic comic has bombed. If you're going to call yourself a comic, like, it's a part of the craft is losing. It's a part of the craft is you're going to take the hit, and a part of the craft is knowing how to take the hit mentally, physically, knowing how to take the hit and moving on. And so you learn, you just get humbled. It's just, that's why I think with stand up, you just learn how to keep cool.
Yeah, if you're good, you get humbled. And then there's some people that don't get humbled and don't learn those lessons, and they'll say that they never bombed, but it's only because they're not accepting or aware of the fact that they definitely bombed a bunch.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a part of the gig, man. And what I've been learning, I read this book, Think Like a Monk, Jay Shetty. He lived in an ashram for like 3 years. He's like, it's like Hollywood kind of, it was on New York's bestseller, but I also read a lot of like Buddhist stuff, but the ego, it's just like, the ego gets pumped up so big, but then it gets into a situation where the ego's not real. That's just the person dreaming all these super fantasies about himself and all that, or herself. But then, real time comes in, and they just get, they're not ready for that hit, or you just look
Reality
stupid. Yeah.
collides.
Reality makes you look dumb, over and over. And then you're just a goofball nobody really respects.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you drink coffee? Is there a Ukrainian way of making coffee?
Well, yeah, actually. So I drink coffee. I just got the regular drip going on in the morning.
Yeah.
We got an espresso machine off the wedding registry, and we got
Oh, you got the clackety clack?
I got the clackety clack. I be clacking in the afternoon usually. Make
Ah,
myself a little cappuccino or a double espresso or something.
what kind of
And
beans
then
are
there
you
you
going with these days, Boris? What kind of beans do you crush your
all
own? What's that?
crush
Yeah.
my own beans, and it's
Where you
all
get your beans?
Costco, man. I
Costco, because
get
I
it all at
remember
Costco.
Boris used to get these big pieces of salmon and he would salt them and he would make his
Yeah, I still
own.
do that.
That is,
I
you
do
still do that. I love that.
I
When I
do
saw
my
you
own
doing that, I was
locks.
like, this cat's on some other level shit, man.
Yeah, I do. Not lox. I guess it's technically just like cured salmon, not smoked. But yeah, just some salt and sugar. Basically, you do up the lox. But the coffee, man, just
Yeah.
Costco. You can't beat it. You can't beat it because they get these. They got good beans. They got organic, like Guatemalan Mayans. They got
Yeah, I got
sometimes
that
Starbucks.
big, and it's the big one. Yeah, the Mayan Guatemala. It's
The
like,
2.5, 5 pound, the yellow bag. They got that
yeah.
one. They got a couple funky colors, but per poundage, like it's good beans, and you can't beat.
Oh,
That's one of the biggest Costco advantages, I think, is the price of the coffee. Like you're talking like 7 something a pound versus like 12, 13 a pound easy in your local grocery store and stuff. I'm all about those beans for sure.
yeah, you can get
And
you
then
shout out Costco beans. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, I got you. You know, I proposed to Costco. I got my uh what is it? I have my loyalty to Costco almost as much as Ukraine and America. I swear to God, if Putin fucking touches Costco, I
Oh,
will lose my shit. Okay, Ukraine is one thing, but you go into Costco and it is over.
over, dude. I went into the Brooklyn Costco. It's always a crazy madhouse, man. It's
It
just
is
packed. There's
wild,
never a
man.
good time. The only good time, I don't want to say on the podcast. I almost let it out. I'm not going to say it because then there'll be no parking space. There's
During the
never any parking.
Sabbath, I'll say it. I'll say it. It's during
It's
the Sabbath.
it's not the Sabbath. I was Tuesday morning. Is that the Sabbath?
Oh, really? Oh
It's
no,
Tuesday
no, it's
morning.
not. I was because there's so many Hasidic Jews there. I was gonna say you got to go
Yeah,
during the Sabbath when they can't go. It's still pretty packed.
they
The
got
Long Island
everybody.
City
There's
one's good.
Hasidic Jews, but the beautiful thing about Brooklyn and even New Jersey and even this northern area is like they got everybody. But yeah, it gets crazy packed with
But they
everybody.
got a lot of Hasidic Jews there. I'll say it. I know you can. No, but the Long Island City one, the Long Island City one's good. There's almost always parking. It's never full. And during the height of the pandemic,
Oh,
they
I didn't
ran
know
that
Long
shit
Island
real
City
good.
had one. That's good. That's a good thought. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
just north of where you go into Roosevelt Island, like right after you pass it. It's right on your left.
I got a big jug of pecans, like a big
Oh
thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
I know
love. I'm a
exactly.
big nut guy.
I
I'm
know the
all about
jug.
nuts. I like cashews, pecans. I don't like almonds. I chipped my tooth on an almond one time.
That'll leave you
Not liking
leave you
almonds.
traumatized from almonds. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um. Yeah, it's a good one. And then I was gonna say, oh yeah, so the Ukraine. I don't know if it's Ukrainian as much as it is like, because Ukraine. The thing that makes it a little bit like different from the rest of Ukraine was like, Putin made all these speeches and he's an insane, thug. But the history, a lot of it was more correct than not in the sense that, Ukraine voted for independence in 91. Prior to that, Ukraine was independent in quotes, I say, from 1917 to 1921, sort of being passed around between revolutionary periods in Russia. Prior to that, like Ukraine really wasn't an independent nation. They were sort of the national identity, as Putin described, like was correctly sort of formed within the formation of like communist Russia. And prior to that, Ukraine's been owned partially by Poland. I believe the Iranian Empire, the Persian Empire, there at one point owned part of Ukraine, like across the sea, and so you have some like Middle Eastern influence a little bit. And so the way I seen my parents make coffee a lot of times was using an Ibrick. So one of those like it's like a handle with like you'll see like in a lot of the Middle East they do it traditionally in sands to heat it evenly. They'll heat a thing of sand and then you put the Ibrick on the sand and it heats the coffee with sugar already in it. And my dad makes it for me now, but I have him make sort of like a bastardized version where I don't like as much sugar. So, but he's like, you have to so he still puts some. It's like, you have to put it in when you cook it. And it's thick, it's like mud on the bottom. So you drink it on
it gets
top.
to almost
and
chocolate. Yeah.
Yeah. And you leave that part floating at the bottom. So you drink it right up until you start getting little chewy bits, but it's really good. It actually is a really delicious way to make coffee.
Yeah, when you infuse sugar in a lot of coffee, and a lot of cultures do that, is what I've learned. And Vietnamese coffee, I'm a fan of. We have a Vietnamese place
sweet
down
and condensed milk.
Yeah, they put that. I'm saying I want it for the culture, but really, I do love a little good sweetness now and then. I try not to do sugar, but sometimes, it's nice.
Yeah, I think it's fine once in a while, but we're probably in the same boat there too, where like we've gone to a crazy place where we just fucking throw sugar in everything, and
I backed off of it. Yeah, I don't drink it with my coffee regularly. Like, my move is just a little bit of oat milk these days, but I'm not religious about it. Like, I'll use milk or whatever anybody's got laying around. But you're doing those bomb ass espressos in the afternoon. I love it, my man.
Oh yeah, I'll do the regular milk, foam it up, get that nice foamy milk in there. It's good. It's a little bit of cleanup, but otherwise it's good.
Oh wow. Yeah. We gotta do this in person, man. Thank you so much for coming on to the Cannabis Coffee Hour, Boris. Is there any gigs, or can you plug your website? What do you want to tell the people? I'll let you go, man. I know you did this last minute, and just peace and love to everybody involved in Ukraine and Russian, and all my friends were all one. That's it.
For sure. Thank you, man. Yeah, people can check out my website. It's just my full name.com, or at the Boris K on all social media. Tomorrow night, I'll be at Drum at 8:00 for Stick a Pole in It in New York. I'll be at Dumbo House Monday night. I'll be in South Orange, New Jersey at the South Orange Performing Arts Center Wednesday night, the 2nd at 7:30. It's an awesome lineup. And then very last plug, I'll be at the Wormhole in Savannah, Georgia, headlining on Friday, March 11th. So if you're in Georgia and you're listening to this, come check it out.
If you're in Georgia and you want to take some acid and go down the Wormhole and check out my man Boris, come through.
Hell
sure,
yeah,
man. Those sound like fun gigs. You're awesome. I appreciate you, Boris Khaykin. Thank you for being on the Cannabis Coffee Hour, brother.
Right back at you, man. All love.
All love. All right. That's it, everybody. I'm going to let you go. Shout out to Wellness Theory up here in Massachusetts. Check them out. The strain is Max Stomper. I will say grade A, good indica, mellow, when it's snowing outside type of vibe. That's it, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, dude. That was very fun. I